Z. So when we talk about intergenerational conflict, we need to be mindful of all these four different and we are going to then unpack some of the challenges and characteristics of each of those conversation, and as I give examples. What's important for us to now do is to try and tease out what are the root causes of generational we experience. Where does intergenerational conflict emanate from? I'm going to share 5 areas that, or 5 issues that may, if lead to or give birth to intergenerational conflict. The first is values. So you will find that baby boomers were raised in a particular way. Baby boomers were raised to be very respectful of authority. They were raised not to speak until and unless they were spoken to. So they value rank, they respect authority, they defer to authority. They value being respectful, and being respectful is derived from the age of the person that you ought to be respectful to. So the older the person, then the more that the person will expect respect. And baby boomers have no problems with this. Baby boomers also valued community more than the other generations. Them came from families that had maybe 4, 5, 6, or even more children. And they were raised to interact with each other, to care for each other, older siblings taking care of younger siblings. So they value community. Whereas as you now progress to younger generations, you will find that the values begin to shift. For instance, millennials derive respect not so much from the age of that they're interacting with, but millennials will want you to earn the respect. They don't just respect you. You have to earn their respect. And oftentimes, the criterion for earning their respect, the extent to which you listen to them and you respect and value their opinion. Generation X, for example, still has some characteristics of baby boomers, because remember, they were raised by baby boomers. So most of them still value community. They will defer to authority, but you again begin to see some of them becoming more assertive. Voice, not always waiting to only speak when they are spoken to. And then our generation Z, for risk is derived from the extent to which you as an adult are able to connect with them. The extent to which they feel that understand their lingo, you are lit, and you really relate to them at their level. So values are about different ways of life, different ideologies and approaches to life. So you will find that millennials, for instance, the education that you went through is different from the education that your parents went through. When you went to school, you were taught to be more assertive, right? You were encouraged to speak up, to express yourself. Whereas your parents' generation had a slightly different way of being socialized. What I often notice too is that millennials tend to be very expressive. You know, you have an opinion, want to give it, and you want that opinion to carry the day in any situation. Whereas our generation, Generation Z, Generation X, and baby boomers more so, we tend to be more deliberate. You know, we take a couple of steps back, we think things through, we process them, we sift our words, we package things in a particular way before we articulate them. And we don't always feel the need to voice our opinions. Much as we have opinions, we don't always feel that it is necessary to air them. So values are not carefully paid attention to may result in serious conflict. The other area is relationships conflict. And here, the conflicts arise as a way out of the way we relate to each other, the way we interact. So again, you will find that the younger generations tend to be more in touch with their emotions. They tend to be more expressive of very strong emotions. This is the area too in which perceptions come into play. You know, I know that a lot of people under 30, for instance, just have no time for older people. And they assume that because older people are not as tech savvy, they are not as quick in understanding technology, therefore there's not even any point in trying to work with people to understand these things. So there's then a lot of stereotyping either way. I also know older people who just do not want to have any conversation with millennials and Generation Z because to really are ill-mannered, they are not raised properly. So I have nothing to say to. Now, can you imagine a work situation where you as a millennial have subordinates that are either Generation X or baby boomers? What would that be if we allowed relationships to cloud our communication? Also then have the perceptions and the stereotypes informing our interactions, how we communicate, how we also decode what is being communicated. A lot of younger people will not to really listen intently and hear what the older person is saying before they react. Because at the back of their minds, they're saying this person is not taking. Therefore, they react before they've even really truly understood what the other party is saying. And the reverse is also true. The other source of conflict is that we call interest-based conflict. So here, it is about issues of how things are done. So procedural interests. And in most families, the conflicts that we encounter, the intergenerational conflict, come as a result of interest-based issues. So procedural issues, where your parents, because they're your parents, think that even though you are now 25 and are working, they still can determine your agenda when you visit with them at home. I mean, I still get with my mom too. You visit her over Christmas or any holiday, and you wake up in the morning and she has a full itinerary for you. And she says, today we are going to visit and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. No consultation, no regard for the fact that maybe you had a different plan for your day. So procedural interest, the way things are done. The other one is psychological interest. To what extent are your points of view, are your feelings, your thoughts factored into how life? To what extent do you psychologically feel that you belong in this family, in this church? And then the third aspect of interest-based conflict is interest, the real issues, the bread and butter issues. And again, parents will tend to say, as long as you live, as long as you don't pay the mortgage, you are going to live by my rules. And becomes a major source of conflict. I will tell you, as long as you are under my roof, you go and come at times that are and are acceptable to me, regardless of what you intend to do. The last one is, so it could be lack of information about, and this is, okay, I'll give an example that's challenge have with their children. So millennials by nature tend to be very insular. You tend not to really worry about everybody else. It's me, me, me. And with that, they don't know what you are thinking. They don't know where to go. You just wake up and you disappear, you don't communicate, and you come back. And when you come back, you go into your room, you shut the door, and music. And so there is that disconnect, even in terms of understanding what is priority, what is lives. And then the other aspect too around information is perhaps how we assess what matters in life. So you will find that Generation X's, especially the older generation, tend to be very concerned about saving, about securing financial security. They tend to be concerned about their children pursuing careers that give them that financial security, background of lack. And therefore they don't want to go back to that background. And so financial and security is very important to them. Whereas the younger generations are more about self and self creativity. Again, because you were raised by parents who were not, didn't want you to experience the hardships that they experienced. Often entitlement in life. So they feel entitled to a fancy car, without really realizing that you have to work and earn these things, and that success is not instant. You've microwaved everything. So you find a lot of millennials get depressed. Years, this millennial still is driving an entry-level car, and they're thinking, but my friends are C200s. And then they start feeling less than, without realizing that is a hard slog. So
okay, is it me?
No,
Is it me?
no. I think
No, no,
I
no. I
think she's
think
been
I
cut
think
off.
we've lost Sister Busi. Okay, while we try to
Oh, she's
engage
still
here
in the
so that at
house,
least,
but network is down. So let's
yeah,
just
yeah.
give
I
her
think your
some
network
time.
is a bit bad. Um, let's just wait for it to come through. I think a couple of points have been put across. Kay, can you just be taking this through while I go and talk to her? She's out already. She's gone.
Oh, she's gone.
Network has kicked her out. All right, I'm
Oh,
coming
okay,
through.
okay. Oh, all right, sir. All right, everybody. While we're still waiting for our sister bosses to come back, I think this you will agree with me that it has been it has become interesting actually. I couldn't wait to hear the end part of it so that we can start discussing because I'm starting to see quite a lot of 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 things that we have no idea about but actually make a lot of sense and why we react or we act the way that we do. So in the meantime, the points that have been touched, Umta has been going through, has been typing rather on the platform some of these points just to help us because of this network. And I think that has been very, very helpful. Just joined on the ladder. But yeah, Generation X, 1967 until 1980, then 1980 to the 90s, the millennials, and then you have the other generation, the younger ones, the problematic ones.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem on that one, Kay.
It's
In the meantime, we're trying to get through to her, and I'm not pulling through at all, so I'm not winning with her
Okay.
right now. As soon as she
All
comes
right.
back, we'll be able to take it up. But we can continue with discussing within ourselves while we wait for Sister Busi to come through. Van Heerden had something to say. Maybe I can just unmute him or her, because they're together as the wife. Now the hand is down. But one of the things that came through was millennials, and I think that's the bulk of us here. Millennials. So we are told that we care about ourselves mostly, and we wake up, go wherever we go, and come back, and we have little to no interaction with our parents, and they never know what we do, what we think, and what's going on in our lives. We never even talk about the critical things about our lives, our wishes, our career paths. I think we only talk when we are asked to, or when we're with somebody. If you want to know something, ask me. If you don't ask me, I won't tell you. And they never know who we even seeing or dating. They just see us talking on the phone over and over again. And our parents are a bit afraid of us. Van Heerden, go ahead. While I try to look for Busi to come through for us here. Go ahead, as we talk about millennials here.
It's a pity that she's gone off, Shame, but I didn't want to preempt. Maybe she was going to say this, that there is no generation that's better than the other. Remember, it's the environment in which the different generations are raised in, as well as how they are taught at schools. So a lot of times people like to hate on millennials, but millennials, guys, who raised millennials? It's the baby boomers, it's the Generation X's. So they are the ones that pass down values and all those things. And there isn't a generation that's better than the other. I mean, that's where conflict starts from, because the older generations would always think they're better, or the younger ones would think they're better. There is no one who is better. We just relate differently. And that's what we should understand. We're not the same, so we relate differently. So we need to understand each other, where the one generation comes from and where the other one comes from. So millennials are more in touch with their emotions. I see there's someone there who has a problem with emotions. We are more expressive. We are more, we don't just take everything lying down without an explanation, whereas the previous generations, the word of someone who's older goes. Whether that person is wrong or right, you don't question, you just do as you're told. But millennials are more inquisitive than that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong, as long as it's done in a manner that's still respectful, so that we don't just take everything without questioning. I mean, millennials are the ones who are talking about decolonizing the church, all these things, because people are questioning stuff. And a lot of older generations see it as rebellion, as being anti-church, all those things, because it's a misunderstanding.
All right. Thank you so much, Van Heerden, for that. Much appreciated. Okay, Janet, you're going to come through, but Busi is back. I just talked to her. She had a power outage. I think power went off. She was disconnected using a different device. So I'm going to unmute her right now, and I'm going to mute Kay and me. Janet, you can lower your hand for now. Let Sister Busi finish up. Thank God she's back, and I'm going to unmute her. Sister Busi, go ahead. Let's see if we can hear you properly now.
Hi guys, I must apologize. We live in Africa and power outages are unexpected. I mean, we certainly were not scheduled for a power cut today, especially this afternoon. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I see you guys were already in dialogue. And I think I had pretty much exhausted the major sources of conflict, intergenerational conflict that I wanted to share with you. The last one is structural conflicts. And I think the last speaker was speaking to this, where we have systems, rules, policies, whether in our organizations or our churches or our society, that defer to age as basis for wisdom, as criteria for leadership. And that then becomes a serious problem for younger people, because power resides with the older, regardless of competence, regardless of the fact that younger people have something to contribute to. I mean, I often observe in our church in particular how we often assume that leadership is synonymous with age, wisdom is synonymous with age. And I often caution in our church boards that, look here, the younger people that we are worshiping with now are people who make serious decisions in their places of work. And therefore, it is crazy for them to come to church and be expected to just sit and say nothing and challenge nothing. So these are some of the root causes of the intergenerational conflicts that we experience in our day-to-day lives. So now I am going to open this up. Let's explore the kinds of conflicts that you have had. And then as I respond, I will then also touch on how we can address and deal with some of these challenges. And then maybe at the end, we can then just sum up and see what it is that can help us to navigate the intergenerational conflicts that we encounter.
All right. Thank you so much, Sister Busi, for that one. Stay on the platform. All right. So now it's time for us to be able to talk. I think people were interested in talking. Van Heerden just put a point when Sister Busi had that power outage, that it's important to understand that there's no generation better than another. We are just relating differently, and we have different ways of doing things. And suddenly now this is the generation that we're at, which is the millennials and the Generation Z. If I got my lesson proper right there. Janet, you had something to ask. So right now, if you want to say something, it's very easy. Just lift your hand through the platform right here. What kind of conflicts have you had? Whether it's family, due to different generations, whether it's church, due to different generations, whether it's friends, well, I don't know, due to different generations, whatever the case could be, what has been what you've dealt with? What do you think we can do? Sister Busi will be able to answer our questions, as well as others that are on the platform. Janet, I'm going to start with you. Chichi, you're next. Janet.
Okay, I wanted to, I don't know, ask, but maybe let me not, I'll start by saying this. Is it the baby boomers, our mothers, right? If I'm correct, or Generation X? They are the ones who raised us, not our mothers, the society that they grew up in. They are the ones who raised us as the millennials. So when they were raising us, they wanted us to be better than them. And we have come to, maybe since we're saying there's no generation that is better than the other, but our elders cannot express themselves as much as we do. They don't question the things that we are now questioning. So I'm not sure if we are better than them because they wanted us to be better than them or not. That's where my question is. Another question that I want to ask is that in the millennial, I got so much of the millennial because I'm inside that. Don't we have different characteristics that goes with the years that we are born? To say the ones in 1980s have this similar character, the ones in 1981 have this similar character, in 1985. Don't we ourselves throughout the millennials have different characters that categorize us as to say these ones, they're the 1981s, these ones are the 1985s, and all of that. So that's where my question was, to say, are we not different in our part? Yes, maybe we might carry a similar characteristics, but in our different years of being born, are we not different as well inside that?
Okay, thank you so much, Janet, for that one. All right, let me give to Chichi to come through. Then your Sister Busi will respond. As we talk about intergenerational conflict, let's not be afraid to talk. Van Heerden, you got your hand up as well. So after Van Heerden, I'll give over to Sister Busi. She'll respond, and we're going along excited about the conversation. Who are you fighting with, and why are the ages a problem? Chichi from Malawi.
Thanks, Ta. I have a question which comes with an explanation. I am one person who has a family where you question nothing. what they say is final, and even if you know that what they're saying is wrong, but as long as they're the adults, that's final, and you can't really. And some of them, I think, no, but nobody falls in the millennials, but then Generation X mostly. So my problem is that there was even a time I had to give myself, as much as this sounds crazy, but I had to do it. I gave myself a break from my family because we just couldn't agree on something that affected me on a very high level, and I got really depressed about it. But then they just stuck on saying that you are young, you have to listen to what we say, and whatever it is your view is, we are not going to listen to you. So this is now where the problem is, that the older generation do not want to be questioned, because maybe, like you said, they were raised in a way that they shouldn't question. But then it's a problem, because you can't just be growing up, and I am 32 now. Why shouldn't I be someone who can make proper decisions just because there is someone who is in their 40s or in their 50s because they are older than me? So my question is, how do you deal with such an issue where you know you're right and the other person knows that you're right, but because they are older than you, they are not going to give you any say in whatever it is that's happening? So how do you deal with that?
All right. Thank you so much, Chichi, for that one. In line with that, there's so many conflicts that we could have on the areas of funerals, how they're going to be conducted, marriage. You know, this is how we want it as a family. This is how I want it as me. This is how, you know, all those kind of conflicts, something that we need to be dealing with. Van Heerden, then Sister Busi will come through. Before Sister Busi, I want to read a couple of questions on the chat group because there's fire right there. Things are happening. Okay, Van Heerden, go ahead.
I'm a bit curious, Sister Busi. These Generation X, Boomers, and the unnamed from 2016, does it apply across the whole world? Asia, Africa, Caribbean, or is just Africa specific? And then I think the second question has already been asked on the chat, or should I ask it anyway? Would you recommend a baby boomer getting hooked up with a millennial or Generation Z?
All right. Okay. Right. That's coming through quite there from Van Heerden. Okay. So are you talking about intergenerational dating? It's now hot in here. Intergenerational dating as to, okay, which generations would probably make the best in terms of them dating. I think that's a question that's there. Can I read one or two questions, Sister Busi? Please be ready to respond on this one. Okay, Blessing says, this makes me wonder how love relationships between, oh, that's the question. All right, let me just read though. This makes me wonder how love relationships between baby boomers and millennials, e.g. sugar daddy or blessers, work or survive. Or maybe because it's a love relationship, they understand each other. No one is trying to be a parent. In other words, in that relationship with someone who's older than you, okay, I want to read something quickly as a question. I think I saw it right there. Sometimes, okay, that's the comment from Brighton. Sometimes, and I wanted Sister Busi to respond to this because I thought it was essential in line with that. Sometimes we must check even the way our education system is now structured. Kids are taught a lot about rights, but not accountability. The end result is that people become narrow-minded and become selfish. Tisetso says, is it possible to have characteristics of another generation? I am a Generation Z, but I feel like I have Generation X traits because I have conflicts with my generation as if I'm from another generation. E.g., when replying someone, I structure my words before just being spontaneous. I hope that it makes sense right there. All right, beautiful. Let's just go ahead and talk about this. Sister Busi, I'm unmuting you.
Okay, thanks, guys. I like the questions that are coming through because I think we're beginning really to now speak to the issues that we are grappling with on a day-to-day basis. So the first question was around the parents raised you. Are they better than you, or have you turned out better? You see, Janet, the issue is parents raise you, but actually when you think about it, you spend most of your time in school. So your education system has a significant bearing on how you turn out. The type of school that you go to also has a bearing on how you turn out. So it's your parents don't question because they were raised not to question at home. School reinforced it. When they joined the workforce, that also reinforced it. I mean, even when they went to university, the interaction between lecturer and student for Generation X and millennials is different. I mean, Generation X and baby boomers is different from how millennials interact with their lecturers, which also speaks to your next issue around are there differences by year? Of course, there are going to be differences by year, but here we are looking at broader typologies. And then even within the year that you were born, we have different personalities, right? We come from different families who have their own microculture as a family, as an extended family. The church that you go to has a bearing. So these are just broad, universal categorizations that have been made. But within them, there is a lot of peculiarities and individualization of that whole experience as a millennial, which speaks to the question that somebody also asked about these typologies. Are they universal or are they specific to Africa? They are universal. But what you will find is that millennials in Africa, by virtue of the various cultural influences that have informed their upbringing, are going to turn out somewhat different in certain characteristics than their North American or global North counterparts. So again, if you look at an American millennial, they're not going to be exactly as expressive as you would find maybe a Japanese millennial. But what is important is that we must appreciate that these broad categories are universal, they exist, but each culture, each country, each context will see certain characteristics manifesting in more pronounced ways than others. I now want to come to the issue of love relationships, intergenerational love relationships. And as I do so, I will respond to the person who asked, is it possible to belong to one generation and yet feel that you relate better and maybe behave more like someone from another generation? Again, your personality comes into play. And your background also comes into play. You'll find that only children who were raised by older parents tend to be more mature. They tend to be drawn more towards people who are much older because that is who they have grown up interacting with. They find their own age mates very childish because they have been raised to already engage in adult conversation from an early age. So that is normal. And then there are some personality types that are just more serious than others. And for instance, I know a young lady, she is 32. She struggles to relate with her age mates. And she relates better with people that are in their late 50s. And those are the people that connect with and understand her better and where she is more comfortable. So that is perfectly normal. Now, coming to relationships, look, I personally would not recommend it because relationships tend to work better when there is more that is similar between the parties to that relationship. So when you are similar in age, you have lived life in a world that is similar than when you are different. But that said, there are people who are able to develop understanding and appreciation and give each other space and room for people to be themselves despite the differences in age. But those are more the exception than the norm, I would think. Now, when you talk about relationships between older men and younger girls, more often than not, it is a transactional relationship. It is the blesser and the blessee. And which is the reason why the blessees will oftentimes then also have their own age mates as, you know, side kicks or whatever you call them. And the blesser is there for the lifestyle. The blesser too has a family, right? And you will find in these relationships that there's not much substantive conversations that take place. It is about, oh, honey, where are you? I miss you. I need money. Send me money. Let's hook up. You go for lunch. You have a nice time. Bye, bye, bye. Very few of those kind of relationships actually turn out to marriage and have those marriage last. But there's always exceptions to the rule, guys. There's always exceptions. Coming back to the young lady from Malawi, I think your experience is not unique to yourself. You will find that sadly, there is a lot of parents that don't seem to understand that saying my word goes works in parenting. As you rightfully say, you are 32, you're an adult. You know, 32-year-olds are running businesses, they're running families. You do have an opinion over your life. What I would say in a situation like that is that it calls for communication, finding strategies of communicating with your parents, your need for them to allow you space to air your opinion in a non-confrontational way. Sometimes it requires you to go through a third party, an aunt that you relate well with, who understands you, who can then relay that message to your parents. But it would also require your parents to be made to appreciate and understand that that way of parenting does not work, and it only results in alienation. I hope that helps.
All right. Thank you so much, Sister Busi, for that one. I got a couple of hands that want to say something here. You know, what's interesting is what's really going on again in the chat group here. And I think the presentation is driving us to a point where we don't see each other as enemies, but we see each other as a working union, appreciating our differences in age because we had nothing to do with that anyway, and saying we can work together within the cohort of our differences. And I love the fact that on this platform, usually it mostly is young adults, but I want to appreciate the presence of our baby boomers, our mothers who are here. I might not know all of them, but I think there's Umam Mdlongo, who's one of them, and maybe there are others that I might not really know by name, and everyone else. But really much appreciate the fact that they can cement or glide with us, even within the fact that we might be different. And I want them to probably also be able to say something as we interact more and more. Wano, I'm going to give you a hand, then Kay. Wano, go ahead.
Thank you, Mta. I have a question. I don't know if it necessarily relates to intergenerational conflict or conflict in general, but then as individuals, we subscribe to different value systems that are usually influenced by religion, a culture, or you're just your individual family setting in general. And when it comes to our, like in religion, we're often taught to always turn the other cheek. Now, my question is, when it comes to conflict, how do you deal with maybe conflict, maybe in a church setting where you know what is going on between you and this person? It's just wrong, but then you're always taught to turn the other cheek, or what would Jesus do and stuff like that.
All right, thank you, Mona, for that one. Very straight and specific. Okay, Kay, Vera, you're next. Kay, I'm gonna unmute you now. Go ahead. Let's start interacting. Let's keep talking about all these things. Remember that it's not an attack on generation, whatever, because no generation is better than the other, but rather it's finding a way in which you can be able to pull through. And we can even give biblical examples of conflicts between generations that happened in the Bible as well. That would be very interesting as we're going along with Sister Busi. Kay, my man.
All right, so thanks, Mta. I have a question. My question is, so it got me thinking now, because most of our conversations, especially when we talk decolonization as young people, we talk and refer to all the times where our fathers lived. Yet for some reason, we also find that we have some serious conflict with our fathers. And we sort of say, no, that is the old way of doing things. They were not questioning things, they're not doing things right. But when it comes to religion, especially decolonization, we revert back to old customs and things that were done by the so-called people whom we say they had some outdated ways of thinking. How do we balance that? I mean, what then do we stand for? Because on one side we're saying we question everything, right? We want to know things. We basically question everything. But then when it comes to religion and we talk decolonization, we then say, you know, we sort of want to pacify and baptize, or rather sanctify, almost everything that was happening before the white man came. But then the same time we are referring to is the same time that has people whom we say that they never questioned everything. They did things because they had their own reasons. We are now more informed and we're questioning everything. How do we find a balance? I'm not so sure if I'm moving from the topic, but it's getting me thinking now, how on one line we may be saying that, well, this is the reason why we do not understand all the people because they think like this. But on the other line, when we talk other topics, maybe religion, we say it was better in the old days, something like that.
All right. Okay, I hear that coming through quite well. You see, some of the things that are coming through on the platform before I give to Vera, Ulwe to say is, you know, sometimes baby boomers try to relive their lives through the millennials, to which is why millennials tend to want to be selfish and self-centered because they spent most of their Generation Z times rectifying the baby boomers' past mistakes. You see, what's interesting, if you do the maths now, this is 2020. So if we talk about millennials, the last one was from 1981 to 1996. So the last millennial right now is 24 years old. That's typical baby making process or baby making age. Excuse me if I'm making the wrong assumptions in the Seventh Adventist Church. But anyway, maybe from 24 and all about, you probably could be having a child. And then now you're going to be the next parent. And then this next generation, which is 2016 and thereabout, they're the next generation whose name we don't know, generation whatever, that's coming through. We need to understand how to, because the same problems that we say we may have with our own generation, our baby boomers, which are our parents, could be the same issues that we will have with the next abo bundle of joy that we're going to be having very soon. So let's think about this as well and how we can interact. And maybe if there are already any baby boom, any millennials here with children, and look at how they relate with their children, how best it can be done, because these conflicts will continue be there by virtue of ages. Vera, I'm going to come through for you now. Go ahead. Then Sister Busi will come through. I want to read a couple of comments as well, Vera.
Okay, mine is also a question. I'm just trying to understand what influences these different characteristics of the different generations. Because, for instance, I was raised by my parents and they raised me in a certain way. How did I come out different? I can already see it in my 6-year-old that this one is different from my generation. Like, he already talks back to me and I'm thinking I never talked back to my mother. He wants me to play with him. I'm like, I've never played with my mother running around. So I can see already that it's a different generation altogether. What influences is this? An increase in knowledge, exposure, economics? What exactly influences the characteristics of the different generations?
All right. Thank you so much, Vera, for that one. Sister Busan, I'm muting you now. You can respond whenever you're ready. But let's just also say that everyone is allowed to respond. If anything that has been asked, you have an answer to what influences the different generations, and every other question that has been asked here. If you have a response to that, please do come through. Tando, you're going to be coming through as soon as Sister Busi goes through. Take it up.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think that the last speaker already sees the difference between her own behavior and her child's behavior. So influences, we look at our socioeconomic factors that come into play. The little ones that are growing up now, this new generation, have you noticed how a 2-year-old instinctively knows how to navigate a phone and work a phone? You give them a phone, a 3-year-old, and they will find their app where they watch their cartoons, etc. So it is, yes, the influence of exposure. We also, the Generation Z, again, the influence of school. They go to school, they interact with children from different cultures. The neighborhoods where we live, we're now interacting more with people from other cultures. Generation Millennials and some of Generation X have traveled, they've lived in other contexts, all those things. So it's your worldview, that also differs as you become more exposed. Things that your parents thought were taboo. For instance, I remember back in the day, when I finished university, I went to England and lived in England for a while. And in the UK, Adventism is somewhat different from Adventism in Africa. And even within the UK, white Adventism is different from Afro-Caribbean Adventism. So obviously, I was no longer the person that I was when I was growing up. And I remember when I first went to the US way back in 1990, I think it was 92 or 93. And my friends whom I was visiting were worshiping in a white church, Adventist church. And on that particular Sabbath, it was Communion Day. And the pastor stood up and said, okay, we're now going for foot washing. So couples will go and wash their feet in a particular room. And those of you who are single will go to a particular room. I mean, I thought, what? Where in Adventism do we see husband and wife wash each other's feet? So as you become more exposed, you begin to realize that some of the things that you held as being sacrosanct, cast in stone, were not really cast in stone. And therefore, the way I would interact, even with an adult or even with a younger person, is different. What is important in all this is, as you rightfully said, Mta, is to recognize that we are not enemies. There is no need to interact in an adversarial way. Seek to understand what makes your parents, your grandparents behave the way they do. Visit them and talk to them. Ask them, so how were you? What was it like when you were a child? And the more we can understand the other, the greater the chance that we will begin to see where they are coming from and recognize that their behavior is not necessarily meant to spite us, but that's all they know. You know, that's how they were raised. And then as we seek to understand them, it is also important that we begin to open up a bit more, especially millennials. Let's move away from this thing of me, myself, and I, my friends are on Facebook or on Instagram. That's where I live. Begin to slowly re-engage with your parents and with your older siblings. Set dates if needs be. Take your mom out for coffee and just hang out and be intentional about opening your world to her or to your dad. And that way we will begin to build bridges that will help us better understand each other. But really, we must move away from this mindset of being prejudiced and of seeing the other group, especially the older generations, as being a waste of time. You know, why should I even explain anything to this old Bali, as we used to say in our generation? It doesn't help, because we need to coexist. And remember, as Christians, it is even more important that we do. But what I would also advise parents that are here is unlearn what you learned. Make that deliberate effort to try and relate better with these so-called selfish, entitled children that you have raised. And maybe just lighten up a bit, loosen up a bit. Go out with your young children, try and understand. So help me understand Instagram. Bond around activities that appeal to your young children or to the young adults. Don't just try and get them to do the stuff that appealed to you in your 20s. So it means both sides or all sides have to make that intentional overture to understand the other and to embrace the other. And then there was Kay's question around looking back with, it's nostalgia, hey? And yeah, life is like that. Life is not clear cut. So there are times when you will think, no, we younger ones have it all together. But there are times where maybe you begin to say, okay, there was some merit in some of these olden values that our parents subscribed to. So that is life. That is perfectly okay, which is why we should never be stuck in our positions. Recognize that the position that you hold about a particular issue may work for that specific issue, but don't be stuck in that position. Don't be stuck or held hostage by that particular stance. All this really is about, one, recognizing that we need to live together peacefully. We need to coexist because we are related by blood or by salvation or by, the fact that we are employed by the same employer. And therefore, it's important for us to do whatever is necessary to make our work environment conducive, to make our church family conducive. And what I would say to millennials is keep talking, raise these issues, but don't be confrontational about it. Package your questioning in a way that will help the other see your point of view and buy into what you are proposing. And then there was a whole issue around turning the other cheek. You see, Christ, when he said turn the other cheek, he did not mean that we become doormats. My understanding of turning the other cheek is, again, seeking first to understand where this person is coming from and then communicating your need in a non-confrontational way. I don't think Christ meant that we must just let everybody walk all over us, because he himself was very assertive. Remember when the older Jews, when he was 12, and the older Jews were trying to question that, you are not qualified to teach in the temple because you are unschooled. He stood his ground. So we must be assertive, stand our ground, but do so in a non-confrontational way. And there are skills and techniques of how we can be able to do that. But the starting point is listen to the other party, understand where they are coming from before you air your own point of view and before you assert yourself. And this is something that millennials struggle with generally.
All right. Thank you so much, Sister Busi, for that one. Keeping on the platform there is hot. K, you just give you time to just run through the comments, but just select the questions that are coming through. I think some are responses there. I'll give you time to be able to say that. Snare Sharon, Shepherd, Tando, you had your hand up, but now it's down. Okay, Kaya also as well. So I've got about 3 or 4 people that want to say something. Let's have that happening while we're going on. Let me start off with Sharon, Mrs. Gabab. Go ahead, Sharon.
Hello.
Hey.
I thought I'd put my hand down, but anyway, thinking you pressed it by mistake again up because she had literally taken what I wanted to say. I wanted to say, Uti, ama millennials, we are what we are because of the baby boomers. And our kids are going to be what they are because of us. So now we should bring this gap, try and balance things up. Whatever they did wrong, let's try and open their eyes, but do it in the way that they will accept. How would Siva, as you are saying, we are putting it in their face, it's like rebellion. So if we bring it to them nicely and they understand where we're coming from, we are building ourselves as a generation in the process, and we are building our kids. Because if we let ourselves go to the extremes, we are going to have kids that are going to run us because our kids are going to be worse. Even the Bible says, our generations to they get worse. We are thinking we are making this thing better, but in a rude way, it's rebellion. Our kids are going to look more rebellious to us because God will be trying to show us this is how we're supposed to do it. So basically, I wanted to say, let's strike the balance. I see kids running families because there is the internet. Usamgele can go to Google and search things that I can't. I get stuck on the phone. He can navigate, as you were saying. It's their generation is open-minded, but as ama millennials, let's try and harness abantwana bethu so that they are not to the extreme, because the world has got all the information, but where do we strike the balance between the world exposure and our morals?
All right. Thank you so much, Sharon, for that one. eye-opening to everyone. Kaya, you're there. Shepherd, you're gone as well. Now I can't see you. Shepherd, thank you so much, Sharon, for that. What do we do? Kaya?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, what I want to say is that, especially to the millennials, right, they are mostly kind of like judged and criticized because of the creation of the new generation, right? So, and to a point where someone was kind of like a survey person, and he told me that, I mean, you can just even go on Google, right, and just type in the millennials are. We just finishing typing, right? You see the things that appear, that the worst thing you would ever think of what many people deem millennials are. So the issue here is that, of course, if you look at technology right now, I mean, in the olden days, right, there were no phones, right? And now millennials are actually criticized for the fact that just because in the olden days, there were no phones, they used to go in person, like for instance, to talk to someone. And then nowadays, I can just stay in my room and just call someone who's actually far away. Not only that, now it is actually affected in terms of employment, because I was looking, there was a study, right, that employers are actually less likely to employ millennials because of what they are deemed to be lazy. So it has really actually affected us in a very, very, very a big way. So the issue is that another thing that people should take note of is tolerance, because at some point tolerance is not a matter of you actually agreeing to what people are saying. It's a matter of you actually let them expressing their view. So instead of us criticizing and judging, which is actually, to me, it's an unnecessary reputation that is being passed from generation to generation. That is actually unnecessary at all. So instead of doing that, what you need to kind of like support and try to embrace the new qualities that they bring to the world, rather than actually criticizing. By doing that, I think we can actually break this kind of like cycle, which is actually unnecessary to us.
All right, Kaya, thank you so much for that one. You know what, you reminded me of a conversation that I had, and Sister Busi would agree with this, because there are people, the Busi generation, maybe our generation, are the current workforce, and maybe the Busi generation, most of them maybe have their employers. A woman who was a lawyer, was a law firm I was talking to some at the time. She says, I do not want to employ millennials at all. They are inconsistent. They are volatile. They make decisions that are immature, blah, blah, blah. If there's a problem at work, they're the first ones to vocalize, and they always want conflict and fire all the time. They are very militant in their approach. And she says, if you look at the current, it was the time during the fees must fall situation in South Africa. So look at who's causing the problem right now in South Africa. It's the millennials, causing headaches over and over for months on end. And in a certain way, Kaya is saying it could affect us even in the workplace. And if you're an employer, who would you employ? The older generation, slow but consistent, or the younger one, fast, volatile, and unpredictable? Shepherd, my man, Dr. Shep, maybe you can tell us more right there. Go ahead.
No, I just want to tell you what we did with the kids on the manufacturing and 3D printing program. So I don't identify with my wife, what my wife just said. I don't know, this makes for an interesting case, because I play with my kids and you find me on the floor and all these kinds of things. And, you know, I actually make my kids be my friends and all that. And now she's on the other side. But we're in the same bracket of agehood, as it were. And just a few minutes ago, she spanked the 6-year-old for laughing at her when she was reprimanding him. Something that I'll never do, you know? But she does these things, and we sort of totally different in terms of our approach, but we're in the same sort of bracket, which is a bit strange, right? And then the other thing that when we speak of, actually by definition, I'm actually part of the millennials, by the way. At the workspace, now we're on lockdown. People who are techno-savvy are the ones who are actually doing the jobs, who are working. You know, and you have the old guys at work are almost dysfunctional at the moment. they are pretty useless because, you know, and also when we get problems, I found that maybe it's millennial thing or because of my belief in doing things justly. I approach people who are old and when they make decisions that I think, which actually practically not not working for the organization or working for the people. I approach someone and I have a conversation with them and stuff, but respectfully so. Not in a confrontational way, but trying to undo the damage that the old guy is trying to do. So I'm just interested in what Mrs. Ms. Ncube thinks about the differences that exist, especially considering my wife and I in relation to the kids. Like, of course, we cannot say millennials behave and are wired the same, but these differences are quite intriguing. That for me, a child must ask questions, but for my wife, you can't ask questions. And this again, a big shout at it. And this again is interesting also in if you bring it to the church setup. If a young elder in the church, older elders in the church expect you to take orders and follow a certain straight jacket of old time religion, old way of doing things. But you have a different view as a young person, and they don't even understand that you can come without a tie. Do you know what kind of hell breaks loose in the vestry when, as a young elder, you come without a tie? Or as a young elder, you tell a children's story, and then one child gives an answer, and then this is before divine service. Then you ask the other little kids to clap hands for the one who has given a correct answer. After divine service, you're going to see hell at the vestry. You're going to be questioning, why do you make kids clap in church? Of course, sometimes we just disrupt the status quo for the sake of, pushing the boundaries.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Shep, for that one. Let me just ask Kay to give us the comments that are there. Kay, I'm going to unmute you now. Thank you, Shepard, for that. I think you're looking for relationship advice, my man. All right, that's great. I muted you just before you said anything. All right, let's just go. Our sister will come through. Kay, take us through.
All right, so there's quite a lot that is happening. The chat room is on fire, guys. I don't even know where to start, but there's a lot that has been said here. I know that I should just read quite a few, and yeah, we get back. So I'm just gonna do one half of the comments here, and then I'll get back to you, Mta, and then I'll come back at the second time. So there is something here that was said by Bridget, very interesting, which is quite a solution. Forgive me, I cannot quite find it, but I can see where I actually said I agree. Okay, here it is. No, it's not. Okay, let me leave that one alone and find something else that is, okay, here it is. Bridget says, I'm not promoting teenage pregnancy, but I'm seeing that the only way or best way to be okay with your kids is to have them. That way, there isn't a big difference. I think that makes quite a lot of sense. And then Van Herden says, kids want to play with their parents because we live isolated lives. Your neighbor has an electric fence and big dogs, so kids have to play in their own homes with mom as playmates. And this also speaks to having relations that are very intimate with your parents. And then let me also read this one here. I think the contribution is Blessing. Blessing says, I think when there is love and true love that is visible even to you as a millennial, the conflicts tend to be less. But being controlled by someone you don't even know if they love you or just wants to make your life hard is something else. Tell your kids you love them always. It will reduce conflict. At least that's what I think. This is what Blessing thinks. And there's an issue here of obedience, whether or not we should obey our parents. I think it is Blessing here who says that respect is owed to the parents, but obedience, no. And that is, there's an extent to which you can obey your parents, but respect, always respect them. And then Ben Jedul was responding there, says what he loves is that millennials are able to read widely and they are able to find solutions. Look at Christ with the elders in the temple. He had a well-listening mother who made a good connection between the gap. You know what I mean? Mary played a role to teach the young men who later was able to highlight what those leaders would not get. quite unique. And then, okay, I think for now, let me just get back to you, Mtar, and then you can continue, and then I will read the other comments later.
All right, I want to ask Sister Busi a question, because that's the problem of being a host and at the same time you are you want to say something. Here's my question, and then you can respond to everything else that comes through as well as we glide towards our conclusion, but still in line with what we're talking about. So you will notice that you talked about a lot of millennials, which is basically the age group that most of us are in here. And even within that, there's differences. But what role does where you were born, and literally I'm talking about the country that you were born, affect your certain disposition or your millennialism, if I may put it across? And why I'm saying this is you'll find out that certain countries, there are people of the millennials, very expressive, super expressive. Then of the same age group in certain countries, they're just very timid, like super, super timid. Even in their worship is very different from the ones that they have in millennia. So even if you meet in different countries, both of you come from different countries, you meet in another country, whether it's overseas, the way you look at things can be different. Can countries also affect this whole millennialism or this whole generation situation that we're talking about right now? I'm going to unmute you now, Sister Busi. Go ahead and answer as much as you can, and then we'll also be able to have other comments coming through.
Okay, thank you. I love the conversation that is taking place on the chat. So keep those comments flowing. Yeah, I'll start with your question, Mta. Obviously, the country that you grew up in is going to have a bearing on how you turn out, because that's the culture that you grow up in, isn't it? Which is why you will find that there are broad characterizations that we have of certain nationalities. For instance, the Swiss are sticklers about time, punctuality, and quality. And so a child that is raised in Switzerland knows that if the train that I need to catch to go to school is scheduled to depart at 12 midday, at 12 midday, that train will depart. And the Swiss go ballistic if the train is delayed by 3 minutes. And when you go to Thailand, for example, the Thai by nature are very peaceable people. They're very agreeable people, generally. These are generalizations. There's always outliers. So when you come to, and then also it's important to realize that even within a country, if you look at ethnic groups or tribal groupings, there's a general perception, for instance, that Zulu people are aggressive. You know, there's a general perception that Malawians in Southern Africa are very polite, very agreeable, and they're not going to give you any problems. I've worked in Malawi. I know that is stereotyping that is not always 100% correct. So yeah, absolutely. Again, it is the cultural influence, the education system. Japanese people, even Japanese millennials, still tend to be more, they defer more to age, they defer more to seniority, because deference to age is something that in Japan is very, very entrenched and practiced even now. So now I come back to Shepard's question about parenting styles. Look, as I said earlier, you may belong to the same characterization in terms of these generations, but remember, you were raised differently. You come into a marriage coming from 2 different worlds or 2 different backgrounds, even though there may be a number of values or characteristics that are similar. Your parenting styles are bound to be different, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Your parenting style is also informed by your own nature and your own disposition. So guys, there is no right or wrong person. There is no right or wrong age group. What is important is to, 1, be aware that we are different. Individually, by age group, by gender, by our backgrounds that we come from, and by our worldview and exposure. So that is perfectly okay. Recognize that we are different and recognize that difference is not the same as having something wrong with that person who is different from you. And recognize that as you point at the mistakes of the other, you also have your own mistakes that they see, but that they are not communicating. None of us are perfect. So you can't say, I am the standard, I am the blueprint. It is about seeking to understand each other, cutting each other some slack, and then jointly finding ways of living peacefully. Now, coming back to the person who talked about social skills, millennials living in cyberspace. Now, the challenge with that is that millennials struggle around building and sustaining relationships. Because you see, you are used to a cyber world where interaction is by expression, words, photos. And when a person doesn't like your Facebook status, you can unfriend them and life goes on. So this is why you find that millennials tend to have underdeveloped social skills. Now, when you then come to the workplace and you have to face people, you have to sit in meetings and listen to the other and be accommodative, this is where millennials struggle. At the same time, Generation X and baby boomers were taught to wait their turn. So even when they are in meetings, they raise their hand and wait to be given an opportunity to speak. Millennials are not attuned to that kind of dynamic. When they want to say something, they just speak. So again, it is important that we recognize these differences that are as a result of how we were socialized and be able to accommodate each other. I know that a lot of baby boomers and some Generation X people feel threatened by the expressiveness of millennials, such that when a millennial raises their hand, especially in a church context, they will just tend to pretend that they have not seen your hand because they don't know what you are going to say. You are unpredictable. And they feel that what if this person challenges me and I'm not able to respond? That then will mean that I then become perceived as less of a macho, powerful, respectable elder than I ordinarily would want to project myself. But what I also want to say is that really there is a lot of millennial bashing born out of people not wanting to be understanding and accommodative. This whole idea around parents still wanting to be prescriptive in this day and age does not work. So I want to say to parents, allow your children the right to self-determination in terms of their vocations and their careers. Someone mentioned earlier this whole thing of parents wanting to live their lives, correct their mistakes through their children. There's a lot of parents that have done that. I know a lot of you millennials, if we were to ask you, the degree that you read at university, was it really your choice or it was prescribed? The profession that you're in, was it your choice or was it prescribed? And a number of us would say it was prescribed. So parents, allow your children to make mistakes. You made mistakes in your lives. Your parents allowed you to make mistakes. So do the same with your children, bearing in mind that God is the one who owns these children. You don't own them. You're just custodians. I like the poem, The Prophet, where there is a poem about children. And it says that children come through you, but they are not of you. So that is something that parents also need to appreciate and understand. But that said, parenting does not come with a manual, a written manual. So children also recognize that parents will make mistakes. They are doing the best that they can, and they are always thinking that they're acting in your best interest. Maybe let me stop there and we allow more comments and questions.
you so much, Sister Busi, for that one that's coming through. And I think you put across very important points as we discuss more and more about this. Kay, you let me know if there's anything right there. We're also live on Facebook. Kay, can you also please go to Facebook just to check if there are any comments there as to what we need to do and understand where we need to come from in all of this. I think a lot of, and this is a good conversation because from here on, we can personalize the situation. So we speak from the abundance of our experience, where we have been interacting with certain generations, whether the ones older than us or the ones younger than us. And I think for millennials, I think generation this Z, the ones that are 1997 to 2016, maybe we don't really interact much with them. They are young sisters and our young brothers, and maybe we care not about them that much as compared to how we relate to our parents that way. And some of the things that are coming through on the platform is that there seems to be a schism between parents and us, especially when it comes to obeying what our parents want us to do. How can we navigate that space? How would you advise someone, and this is a question to everyone on the platform, how would you advise someone who's having conflict situations with parents? Apart from the mere fact that we must understand each other, a decision must be made, and an action must be taken. So what do we do? Whose ideas do we end up taking, and all that? And also keep in mind that the millennials may have had power or have power. Someone talked about the fact that children run households, and these are young children, kids who run households. But also at the same time, we as millennials, in certain ways, we run our mothers and our fathers because we are the ones with the money. We're the ones with the money. And especially on points where you look at it, that the fact that they don't have the money, so they cannot speak bad about the money guy in this particular case. I'm the one with the money here at the end of the day. So there's certain things that they let me go ahead with and do because I have the money. Certain things that they would never have allowed another child in the same family to go ahead and do because they do not have money. So we get money very quickly at a young age. Before you're 30, some people have houses, have cars, have everything. Things that our mothers and fathers never had and probably still don't have up to this time. So then how do we deal with those kind of situations? And this is a question to everyone. I heard Sister was laughing about that. And I think that's quite interesting. I just want to make sure that I evoke as many comments as we can in all that. Sister was, I don't know if you want something to say on that, because I'm still waiting for the people to lift up their hands. Kay, let me know when you're ready and you can read the next half of the comments. Sister Busi, if you can, please do.
I am laughing so hard. So money rules. You know, the one with the money is king. Guys, let me tell you something. We have a saying in my language, and I think it's similar in Zulu too, that goes like this. Ukuthi indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili. I want to tell you that, you know, when you are in your late 20s and in your 30s, you really think you have all the answers to life. But I just want you to exercise some humility when I'm addressing this issue of who should make the decision and how, you know, obeying our parents. Exercise humility. Your parents have done this thing called life, eh? They have seen all the permutations of life that you have not yet seen. So sometimes defer to them. But what I would also say is that the challenge comes in that parents will just say, this is what you should do. Don't marry this girl of yours that you're madly in love with. The girl that you should really marry is that one you grew up with that is not so pretty and that doesn't speak English with an accent. What they forget to do is to explain the reasons why. I was raised by a mother who is like that. You know, I would run into problems with my friends. And I remember one time I had a major fallout with my best friend. And I was already in my late 20s. And when I told my mom, she said to me, I kind of saw it coming. I knew that the power was asymmetrical in this relationship. And then I said to her, so why didn't you warn me? She said, because I wanted you to experience it for yourself. That way you would learn the lesson better than if I had told you that this friend is not good for you. So what I'm saying is that parents have a lot of wisdom, guys. Accept that. Concede, right? I am telling you, I I look back at some of the decisions that I was making in my 30s and I say, oh my goodness, I was such a fool. And yet at that time, I thought, no, I've got this, you know. So I think we really need to exercise some humility when it comes to that. But at the same time, the one weakness that I see in African parents is that we tend to pass the judgment without explaining how we arrived at the judgment. And this then creates problems for us because our young people then just see us as no people. You know, I know young people who say, my parents, you know, you ask for anything, it's just no, 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 no. They never say yes. So maybe again, it is about sitting down and really explaining life. And I think our Caucasian friends do a much better job of that as a parenting approach than we as Africans do. You then asked him, what else can be done to bridge this gap besides just seeking understanding? You know, most of the conflicts that we encounter would not arise if we invested in better communication, sitting down and dialoguing. There is no better solution than sitting and talking, dialogue. Before something escalates that is drastic within your family, be preventive in your approach. If you find that, as I said earlier, if you find that your parents are non-communicative, write a letter to them, do something, but let us open up and talk. These days, you will find that in a lot of families, we are seeing the misfortune of young people committing suicide. And a lot of them will say in the letters that they leave behind, I could not talk to my parents, I could not communicate about this. So you see, the issue for them was that need to have a platform to be heard, a platform to speak. That for me is the most important skill and the most important exercise that we should institute within our families. I think I've spoken to all the issues that have been raised so far. I don't know if I've left anything.
No, I think you've covered everything now. All right, thank you so much, Sister Busi. Kay, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to unmute you now, and then we can take it up from there. Sister Busi, usually we end at, well, we don't usually, on paper, as millennials, we say we end at 4, but let's just glide through the conversation, and when you feel like everything has been exhausted, we can end our session. There's also the after scenes session that takes place where people interact with each other. That's another opportunity for us to talk further and further, all that. Kay, read.
All right, so thank you so much for that, Mutar. What I just did now, going through the comments, I realized that are just conversations that people are having here, and it's really, really interesting. So I'm just going to summarize some of the points that I've got here. One being that sometimes parents are wrong, and they have to learn that they are wrong. They have to understand that they are not always correct. So sometimes they are wrong, and they have not seen this thing quite well, or they've not experienced it. Or sometimes they just use that because they want to have the voice to say something, but truly they have not much knowledge on that. I just want to then add my own comment here and say, I want to appreciate the elders from the other generations, as you've said, Umama Mdlongwa and the others are in this platform, that avail themselves to young conversations and listen to us speak, because I know quite a few who are very youthful, who come up with topics, who come to talk to us, and we can engage with them together, you know, in the same level, and we can understand each other. The other part is communication. It is communication. One thing that I've seen to hurt relationships between these generations is absent fathers and absent mothers. And I would plead with you, if any of you here have kids as young as you are, please make sure you spend time with them. We know and everything like that. We're raised by our grandparents, that's fine, but we longed to have our parents there with us and relate with us, because the problem is, I'll be staying there with my grandmother. You come from us, you're coming from not having seen me in the last 2 years, and I must just respect you because you're my parent. I have no relations with you. I have nothing with you. And then you're like, hey, I'm your father. You must listen to me. And I think that brings a lot of problems. So if we can bridge that that communication where we are present in our life. I mean, in the children of our, we are present in the lives of our children. We can effect and notice changes as they happen. We can tell what kind of children we have. We can tell what tendencies they have, what weaknesses they have. My question as I move from this platform is, so in our what do you call this? In our attempt to VH, stop that. I see that comment. Children of our lives, guys, stop it. Okay, so as we try to shorten the bridge between ourselves and the other generations, how do we make sure that we do not end up with a situation where, as Umta was saying, we end up running our parents? And it has become prevalent these days, sometimes even out of care, like, and you tell your parent, hey, hlala phansi, awuyi lapho uzogula. And parents, they throw fits and they sit down at the end, because after all, if they do get sick, you are the one who's going to pop out money and then take them to hospital. So for that reason, that I'm the one who's taking care of things here, some abuses here and there can actually happen. So how do we make sure that we do not end up abusing the power that we now have because we have that privilege? How do we make sure that that does not happen? Because I've seen children who run houses. I've also seen very strange conversations where a young girl, I think recently, which I admired, but it made me cringe also at the same time, where the young lady was like, Mom, I have a boyfriend now at school. So actually, I think I'm ready for sex. Is it okay? I want to sleep with him. And the mother is like, well, you know, you have to be careful and stuff like that. And the kid says, I don't want to use protection. So you and your father did it. I mean, you and my dad did it, and here I am. I'm here. You had me. So why can't I do it? Why can't I learn it for myself? Why do you want to control my sex life? And I think it's a good platform because you get to know what the child is going through and the emotions they are facing. But at the same time, is there what do you call this? The thing that there's this thing that when we grew up, our parents said, "You ungavumeli abantwana bakujwayele kakhulu bazongena ephaketheni. Do not allow your children to get too familiar with you because they will end up disrespecting you." So how do you then strike the balance where you are in a relationship that is very open and intimate with your child, but at the same time there is respect? Because many times where you try and forge a relationship, you get disrespected as a parent.
All right, that's thank you, Kay, for that. And I think you read some of the comments and also the fact that you were asking certain questions and all that. I think we need to get again to the basic idea, the basic tenet of the situation, and be able to conflict, but constructively. It's inevitable we will not get along. That's fine. That's okay. But in our not getting along, can we find a solution that is amicable, a solution that is Christian in its ideal? And I just wanted to ask if there's anyone, just to evoke comments, because maybe we can give it another 10 minutes, Sister Busi and Kulula here, and then we can end our session or so. Is there anyone here who has had a situation of an intergenerational conflict and is free enough to tell us, maybe not really all the details, but how they were able to solve it? I know Sister Busi talked about communication, respect, and all that. I don't want to probably know maybe a personal thing, because sometimes it gets a bit easier to understand more about that. And just give us brief details of that if you are comfortable with that. Let us know how you were able to solve it and all that, if there's someone like that. But before that comes through, Edwin says, I feel like the Generation X was brought up on the thinking has to be done for you kind of concept, considering that they come from baby boomers whose parenting failed pretty much because of the wars and the dawn of civilization. I see a generation after generation parenting failure. Now the conflict arises against the millennials who have been brought up in a free world, having, and I'm also going to read here, we'll move through, in a free world. Okay, I think that they didn't finish, Edwin, in a free world. And I love that how we put it across, because baby boomers were during the time of the wars. Then they had the Generation X generation. Then the Generation X had us, the millennials, who are in the free world right now, and things are a bit different. Senzo, hopefully you want to confess. Go ahead, my man.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I've got like 10 nephews at home. And all of them, there's one that is not even listening to me. You know, they look at me like, what? I get it, there are some of them that are even taller than me, like they're very tall. So I think one of the problems with the Generation X, they are very, very, very tall. And you'll find them that they look at you like, this one is short, like they don't even listen to you. You know, so and in some of the instances that I decided not to not say anything. Like my other nephew, he's got a girlfriend, he's posting around, what. He says that he wants to get married, wants to make babies. This one, I've been changing your nappies like recently. Now I want to get a baby. I mean, those kind of things. And I've been telling him to stop doing that, to not have this fuzzy infatuation thing that he's having. But he says, yeah, you don't know anything. Yeah, and he doesn't respect me. And he keeps on saying to me, maybe when you fire blanks and whatnot, since you don't have a kid, you know, all those kind of things, you know. And the same person will come to me and ask for money. You understand? Comes to me and asks for money because he's not working. He left school at he left school at grade 11, you know, was like, I don't know, when I go work, what. He does not listen. And such things, man, I just leave them like that. And my cousin said, Senzo, just leave that person, let them learn the hard way, because sometimes you cannot convince them. These youngsters, you cannot convince them at all. When they're determined to do something, they'll do it. So the best way for me is that I just let them do whatever they do. They err and whatever they're gonna do, and then they will see from there that they'll see that from there that whatever they took, the decision that they took, they should have listened, and they'll deal with the consequences. Because honestly, to talk with these youngsters, it's draining. Honestly, it's draining. I have never resolved anything with them, even though I've never resolved. At least girls are better. At least girls, I speak to them nicely, they listen. But the youngsters, the boys, boss one, they will tell you stories, will end up punching him in the face. I'm telling you.
All right, thank you so much, Senzo, for that one. That's a confession that you guys put across there. And I think maybe leaving it to the consequences could be a bit dangerous, because the consequences could be very, very bad at the end of the day. This is very interesting that you put across, and I'm gonna give to Sharon right now, because it's something that I think I speak for millennials when I say this. We would never talk to our Generation X parents about sex. They assume things, but they never actually tell us. They never sit us down to say, is Mthandazo having sex? Maybe. If he is, I'm not going to ask him. There's a general, we know stuff is happening, but nobody asks anything. But this is a message that I got from my sister's child, and I just want to read this as a confession, right? And I also want to read this very quickly. It says, hey, Uncle Nta, as I was thinking, right? You parents don't teach the term dating or being in a relationship when young people get into it. I'm reading from the phone. When young people get into relationships, they don't know what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Okay, you see, this is an 18-year-old telling us what we should do, right? Let me make an example. Let's say you're in a relationship, and now because the guy does most of the work or has most of the money, you now feel obliged to give back because he's the dominant one in the relationship. Young people don't understand this whole thing called dating. What should be done? Is it all about sex and money? Like, do you get my point? Hey, the world is evolving, and how your relationships was in your times is totally different to how relationships are. Oh, the hands are popping up now. Let me stop there. But either way, it went further, the conversation. But this is her being very assertive and talking to me. I have never had a conversation with my mother about sex. Never. She may assume what she assumes in her head about me, but we've never sat down to say, hey, what's going on here? Okay, I gotta give hands. Sibusisiwe, I gotta give you, then I'm gonna give to Snare, and then I'm gonna give to Janet, then we'll give Sister Busi to give us the deliverables of our lesson, then we can see how far we can go and end up our session. Okay, Busisiwe, I'm happy. Thank you for coming through. You're one of our speakers, still here. God bless you.
Hello. I was married to a generation, what's this? I think it's a Generation X, and I'm a millennium. And it was almost a disaster. It was almost a disaster because we would, apart from that he was abusive, but we always disagreed in a lot of things. I would be saying how I felt, and he would think it's disrespectful. I would tell him, you know, sometimes I would say something, and because I'm so angry and pissed off, I would say, you're older than me, but now I'm educating you about this and that. But it's because I felt like I was not heard in the marriage. I felt that he was behaving more of a father than a husband. That if I called him out on something, he saw it as disrespect and not just me being a partner and talking to him. So as much as sometimes as women, we prefer dating older people, but it might also be a problem. You want to go to a wedding, yeah, now he's tired, now he wants to go home. So in our dating space, we have to also be careful of that, you know. You want to date someone who's older, but then it becomes a problem later on. You are still enjoying yourself, he wants to leave because he's already passed through that stage, you know. You are thinking of having kids, he doesn't want kids anymore. So we need to be also careful in that part of our lives, that when you want to date someone who's older or marry someone who's older, think of those things, you know. You might still have the strength to run with your kids, but the guy doesn't have the strength anymore. If maybe he's widowed or he's divorcee, it might also be a problem. So I think also in dating, there needs to be that discussion where we'll talk about this and advise each other accordingly. You might want to date or marry someone older, but you must know the pros and cons. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Busi, for that one. Ntombi Zodwa, Snare, I'm going to come to you because you have said something before. Then Janet, right there. The women power right here. Ntombi.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, talking about experience, I think this was just the relationship that I had with my father. At some point after my A levels, my dad knew exactly what he wanted me to study, and he really wanted me to study that. And that time I had like a different career path, and you know, I didn't go to school for a while because my dad kept saying, "It's my money. I think I know better what suits you. Also, because I'm the one who's going to be paying fees, you should study whatever I think you should study because I've been around." The problem is my dad had his first child at 39. At that point, I think at some point he had given up on having kids. Then at 39 came my sisters, then me at 40 something. So I think we've got like a difference of 45 years. So you can understand trying to reason with my dad, a Generation X type of person. So what ended up happening is I became this disrespectful child, and I ended up not going to school because he was saying it's either my way or no way at all. And I told him, if you really want to go to school, then you better go to school yourself, pay for your fees. Me, I'm just going to stay at home because I'm not going to study that. So right now, as it stands, my dad thinks I'm one of the most focused persons that he has ever met. I know what I want, and I challenged him. So for us, it wasn't a smooth ride. It took us years of fighting, and my dad thinking that he's giving up on me. And now he's got a different experience. He's become this person who's more accommodative. He listens to other people's opinions. Now I really think like he tries like put effort to come down to my level and understand. So what we were discussing today really appeals to me, and I have personal experience of dealing with a Generation X type of person who is very stubborn and opinionated.
Oh, thank you so much, Ntombi Zodwa. I love the confessions. I love the testimonies that are coming through right now. And the fact that they think that you're stubborn. And don't forget that they beat. Generation X beats you. If you've never been beaten by your mother or father, and you thought that, you know, I was beaten by my mom, and I looked at her, I'm like, this has to be my stepmother. There's no way someone can beat you this much and still be your mother. So these things happen. Generation X, Z, as is talked about. Okay, Sneh, there you go. Sharon, let me try that again.
Hello.
Yebo.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Okay, last experience. Okay, here is mine. I wanted to give experience lay on the basis of ukuthi at times abantu abadala they are wrong, and it's difficult to show them ukuthi they are wrong. Even after some time, they still don't acknowledge ukuthi they are wrong. Okay, my experience was on the wedding when we got married no Hleng. Abadala they wanted umshado eholu with I don't know how many guests. You can imagine how many people will come ongabaziyo, and you're trying to tell them ukuthi no, we don't have funds. Now we just want a backyard wedding, now abantu abangu-50, and we enjoy ourselves. That's what we can afford because we don't want expenses after the wedding. And it was a big fight to the extent which we ended up canceling everything. Those who knew us back then, they were so shocked. We ended up going to Home Affairs. We registered. We just went there with our witnesses. And came back. No expenses. Because people wanted us to fork in money that we didn't have. And it was one person who was working full time then, but now they didn't get all that. So abantu abadala at times they live, as someone said before, they want to live their lives through us because Ubani wanted to get married at City Hall and couldn't afford, but they want it now because Umtanabo is getting married, so they want to force you to pay Imali City Hall that you don't have. You buy my cake and do all the stuff, and everyone wants their child to be carpet. So abadala at times they just overload abantwana, and these millennials end up being rebellious because also overloaded and you want to relieve yourself. So to relieve yourself, you just have to be rude.
This is something else. It's a lot of confessions that I go ahead, Sneh.
Yeah, that's my confession. Can you understand us? To reason with the people, misunderstanding that as much as we have to come to your level as well.
All right, thank you so much. These are conflicts that we're having, and I'm glad Mam Mdlongwa there. Generation X people are also there as well to align that to not just on marriages, even on lobola issues, on funerals. People have problems with that as to how things should go on funerals, and I've always had a problem in my family funerals. I just think the church should never take over a funeral. We should do it the way we want to as a family. We should invite the church to come if we want to. But if you go to other families, like when we had a situation at mine, I'm also doing a confession. My grandfather had died and they wanted the church to take over. I fought like a millennial, stubborn like a millennial, and I won the battle because it was my grandfather and you will bury him the way we want to, not the way the church wants to. Bandalitini, Janet, there you are.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to speak on what you and Sens touched on to say, well, we are the millenniums, they are the coming generation after us. They are so, I don't know if you touched on that aspect of, they are so technologically advanced. They know much more than we ourselves know. Check a young, like we have our young child at home who's 5. He learns through e-learning. Sometimes he even teaches me some things that I don't know. So imagine when he's growing up, with what is he going to be exposed to at some certain age? So, and the other thing that I'm also realizing, the things that they watch is totally different. Us when we were growing up, we would go play on the sports ground and enjoy. But when they enjoy their space by watching TV, they're so much exposed to such kind of things like sex, as you were saying. They know much more, and if we don't speak to them, listen, it's the way our parents raised us up, like umamako will not talk to you about sex, is not going to work with this upcoming generation. If you don't talk to them, they will go learn it from someone else outside, and it becomes dangerous when they learn from someone else outside because they will learn it the wrong way. So I want to talk to people who are going to become parents. Make your child your best friend. You would rather hear it from your child rather than to hear it from his friends, because you don't know because at that time when you learn it from him, or from her, you have a chance to teach her what is right. And as I'm thinking along that, as we are becoming best friends to them, let us listen to them. They want to be listened to, with eagerness, with courage, because they spend maybe most of the time we're at work and everything like that, and they don't get a chance to talk to us as parents. And And I think that we should also correct that as well. So this is what I want to just pause on. But this generation that is coming after us, they are so technologically advanced. They know a lot of information than we do. And sometimes we have to listen to them more than we speak.
All right. Thank you so much, Janet, for that one. Mam Mhlonga, thank you so much. I think you lifted up your hand. I didn't want to ask you, but I'm glad you did. And then Galaxy J7 Neo, you come through. Sister Busi, I'm sorry about that. I said that, you said let's talk. So sorry about that. Please bear with us now. We'll be finishing soon enough. Mam Mhlonga.
Happy Sabbath, everyone.
Happy Sabbath, Mom.
Mta, mina being an ex, I brought up a millennium, ne? But what I noticed, it was difficult when we grew up our children. But then my first two girls, when they go to their university level, they did their university level in the States. So I noticed that, I just thought they are far away. And I could not detect anything to them. I thought these are my friends. Because they are far away, we need to reason together. I need to help them along the way. We need to advise each other because we are not in one place where I would say this one and detect. So they become my friends. They are like my sisters. So whatever they see wrong in me, they point out, Mama, yeah, we address it like sisters. So we are on the same level. So it is much easier. It was much easier for me, for the two girls in the States. So until now, I find it very easy to relate to one another. But it's different with the boy, Fortune. So a boy is different than the girls. He would go, away and come home very late. And the father would talk to him and would try and reason with him that, you shouldn't come late, you shouldn't come late. Until the father got to a point where he said, you know what, we should stop here. We have told him, I think now he knows how we feel about it. So we stopped. And he made his own mistakes out of that going out and coming late. And he learned. It's like a baby. When you sit a baby next to the fire, you let it touch or let the baby touch the fire so that they know what it means. So we let him also, with that going out, he made mistakes out of that going out. And now he's settled. So sometimes, you have to talk and stop. Don't talk too much and, boredom him. Just talk and advise him and let him see life and experience the consequences, and he will come back. He will be okay. So as long as you relate to each other nicely.
All right. Thank you so much, Mam Mhlonga. That's definitely an ideal situation. And that is a case study of what to do when it comes to this one. Galaxy J7, you'll be next. And then after that, I'll give to Sister Busi to round up everything for us here. It's been a very exciting and a beautiful conversation that we've had. We need to talk more about this and discuss. Galaxy J7 Neo.
All right. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, my brother.
All right. That's super. Mine is a question. I guess Sister Busi will address it. Maybe she might have touched on it during the course of the presentation. So now my question is, what's the hope for someone who is just about the boundary of the division of those generations? I'll speak mainly like for a guy, for example, that maybe someone born in the early 90s and someone born, or let's say a lady born somewhere around 97, there is somewhat a disconnect in some way. I mean, normally they would speak of who would take out, marry someone who's actually younger than them. But there's a disconnect, I think mainly because of the fact that they fall into those different generational gaps. Yet at the same time, you wanna, marry someone who's maybe a few years younger than you as a man. So where is the hope for someone who's just about at the boundary there, where you actually feel that there's somehow a bit of a disconnect? Where is the hope for someone in such situation?
All right. Thank you so much for that one. That should be divine. Then I'm going to give over to Sister Busi to run through all the things that we've done. I know it's been a mouthful. Sister Busi, run us through. Thank you so much, Divine.
Thank you very much. I must say I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Guys, thank you very much for your active participation. I always feel very energized when I work with millennials because you don't have to struggle to draw them out. So thank you. It's really been a great fun, and a pleasure to be with you. So let's now just look at how do we summarize all this? And I'm not going to repeat what I've said, but I'm just going to share a few concluding thoughts that hopefully should help us to now tie this thing up nicely and then know how to navigate life going forward. I want to start off by saying that for children, let's remember, especially us as Christians, that we are duty bound by commandment that is found in Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, which says that we need to honor our parents. So someone was saying, where do you draw the line? You can have this fantastic relationship with your parent to the extent that one cannot tell who is a parent and who is not a parent. Always remember that you are duty bound to honor and respect your parents. In what aspects should we honor our parents as children? Give them their place and respect them. In other words, you need to draw in your mind limits of what you can and cannot say to your parent, regardless of whether you are the one who is bankrolling them or not. That is a duty that God expects of you, regardless of how unjustly they have treated you, of the disappointments that you have had as a result of how they have parented you. Bear in mind that there is an obligation to God. But also remember that this commandment comes with a promise. And you need to take this commandment very seriously. None of us have perfect parents. But when you operate from a position of, I need to honor these sinful, these difficult, these impossible parents that God gave me, you then need to go back to God and ask Him for the strength that you need to be able to honor your parents. Part of honoring your parents has to do with respecting them and giving them their place. They may not have money, but they are the reason why you have this money today, because they sacrificed so much to send you to school, to give you opportunities, to give you exposure. So you are duty bound. That money didn't come from nowhere. They actually are the ones who invested in you. Secondly, part of honoring your parent has to do with saving face. This is something that talks about don't intentionally embarrass your parents. There was some person who talked about, at times the only solution is to be rude. You can stand your ground without embarrassing your parent, without being rude. Save face always. The same applies for your superiors at work. The same applies for the elders at church. I always say that in conflict, be hard on the issue under discussion, but be very soft on the people that are involved. So exercise sensitivity in how you stand your ground and assert yourself. Also bear in mind that your parents are under immense pressure from society to show that they did a good job in parenting and raising you. So some of this irrational, seemingly irrational, illogical behavior, the firmness that you don't understand, comes from a place of anxiety and uncertainty about how your conduct and how you turn out will impact on how they are perceived in terms of whether or not they were good parents. So they are coming from that place too. And therefore, again, we need to understand and accommodate that. Now, coming to parents, what is it that we can say as we conclude? I would like to say that let's always remember is Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. It says fathers, but I would like to say parents, do not provoke your children to anger, but raise them up through discipline and godliness. Also remembering what Proverbs chapter 22 verse 6 says. It's an injunction to parents. Train up a child in the way they should go. And rest assured that when you have done your part to train, when you have done your part to show the way, that child may veer off the road, but they will never depart from that path. And we have numerous experiences that we can share. I'll speak about my father. My father was a pastor's son. His mother was a pastor's daughter. My grandparents had 5 sons, 2 daughters. All the 5 sons at some point left the church. My dad he used to drink. His brothers also used to drink. He worked for a tobacco company, worked for national breweries. My grandparents died with my father still out there drinking. But guess what? At some point, he made a turnaround. Him and his immediate younger brother got rebaptized on the same day after both my grandparents had died. My father died last year. The last time I saw my father was when we had a prayer meeting at his house with one pastor, because he was not well, so we asked the pastor to come and pray for him. That's the last time I saw my father. But can you imagine on the resurrection morning when my grandparents wake up to find that their sons are saved in the kingdom? So parents, our duty, your duty is to train, show the way. As Umdlonga said, Umamdlomo, children will veer off the path. That is not your duty. Continue to present them, to lift them up to God in prayer. But also, like the father of the prodigal son, be prepared that they will make mistakes, and that when they do make mistakes and come back to the path, you are ready to embrace them. Let's do away with this culture of banishing children and saying, I don't ever want to see you again. So discipline your children, set boundaries. This is very important. Even as you build relationships with children where you are friends with them, they must know that this is where you do not cross the line. I had an amazing relationship with both my parents. You know, when I was talking on the phone and I was speaking to my dad or to my mom, you would think I'm speaking to some friend. But guess what? I knew my limits, and I still know my limits with my mom, despite the fact that we are very, very close. So set boundaries and maintain them. The other challenge that especially millennials and Generation Z have is the value incongruence that they see in parents. So the parent says to a child, honesty is important. You must not tell a lie. But they consistently hear you lying on the phone. That will compromise you in their eyes. And millennials and Generation Z will not even bat an eyelid to tell you that why that's rich coming from you. You are always lying to your employer, or you are always telling us to say to the debt collector, you are not here. So we need as parents to be consistent in upholding the family values that we have defined. And let us stop being preachers, but rather be exemplars to our children. Let us teach as we do and not as we speak. Finally, it's important for all of us to recognize that conflict is inevitable. Whether you are within the same generation, I've never seen people who fall out with their friends as frequently as millennials and Generation Z do. Yeah. So conflict is inevitable in life. Let us expect it. Let us embrace it. Let us anticipate it. Let us also recognize that none of us are perfect. And because I know I am not perfect, I cannot expect perfection from the other. So let us exercise grace. Let us extend grace as we interact with each other. Let us also see conflict as an opportunity for us to redefine the rules that we live by, to redefine our relationships such that we will emerge out of conflicts stronger than before. Because remember, relationships matter in life. We live together, we are family, we are bound by blood, we are bound by salvation, and therefore we can't wish each other away. The only thing that we can do is when we have conflict, let us talk about it, let us confront it, let us be very hard on the issue under discussion. At the same time, exercising love, sensitivity, and extending grace to each other so that we can continue to dwell together in unity as the Lord would have us dwell. We will end there today from my end. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I think if you see the comments that are coming through, people are grateful. Amen and amen. I think that's a Christian way to do things. When someone has said something that is so true, so potent, so spiritual, so amazing, as you have said, Sister Busi, the church must say and respond, amen, amen, and amen. Right now, we'll close with the word of prayer. But before the word of prayer comes through, Sister Busi, you will give us the word of prayer. I just wanted to announce what's going to be happening starting from maybe Sunday. Tomorrow, we're going to be having a lesson at 7 p.m. Where we're going to be tackling the Sabbath school lesson, 7 p.m. on Sunday, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, 7 p.m. on Thursday as well. So we'll be tackling different portions of the lesson. For an example, on Tuesday, we're doing Monday, Tuesday section. On Thursday, we're doing Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, over and over again. So we don't really take much time. We're at a point where we just look at different sections. So 7 p.m. using the same link that you used for today. Please do not forget that. Next week, we're having Dr. J. Papu, who's going to be taking us through Adventism Without Borders. That's Dr. J. Papu next to Sabbath. It's going to be a wonderful time as well, just like it always is. Grateful to everyone who came into the platform here, who stayed as long as they stayed, but more even grateful to our speaker, Sister Busi, Ncube. As I put on a profile, if you want the details and everything, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'll also put her details. Sister Busi, are you comfortable with that? Oh, she's muted. All right, I'm going to put my details in case anyone wants to contact her, wants her for a speaking arrangement, or wants her for any other help, advice, whatever the case could be. Definitely wouldn't mind. That's my number that I put to everyone now. Please do contact me on that. It's a South African number. Contact me on that number so that we can be able to talk together and interact. Thank you so much for coming. God bless you. Those that are giving us money for the airtime, for donations, for those that don't have airtime, thank you so much, much appreciated. If you still want to make further donations to this, please do not hesitate to send on to that number as well, to my number, so you can give other people the money that they probably need to get into such very important things that we talk about. From here on, we become better people as we facilitate from 2:30 conversations. Thank you to the people that are coming from different countries. There are a lot of members that came through as well. Thank you, much appreciated. The platform will still be open. There's what we call the after scenes, where we now discuss further on what has been deliberated and other issues that come up. It's a socialized. I think we miss each other. We miss talking to each other. So we don't close the platform. It goes on. It's indefinite. It's informal, but still at the same time, it is a Christian platform where we interact and talk. Maybe you can feel a bit freer to talk during that other time after the after scenes. Our speaker for today, Sister Busi, I'm going to unmute her. She's going to take us to God through the object of prayer and take us through, Sister Busi.
Shall we bow our heads as we pray? Our most gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we come before your presence this afternoon, thanking you, Lord, for the gift of life, and thanking you for the gift of the Sabbath. We recognize, Heavenly Father, that you love us in ways that we could never even understand or ever imagine. Specifically this afternoon, we want to thank you for the opportunity that you gave us to be able to share our thoughts, our understanding, and our experiences about a subject that really troubles us as your children, the issue of conflicts that we encounter in our lives. We thank you, Lord, for your presence throughout this conversation. We thank you for the guidance of God, the Holy Spirit, who was able to give me utterance, Lord, and who was able to facilitate and aid in understanding to everybody who participated. We recognize, Heavenly Father, that on our own, we will not be able to build the kind of relationships with our families, with our colleagues, and with our church community that you would have us build. Therefore, we pray for God, the Holy Spirit, to speak to us. Convince us, Lord, where we need convincing. Convict us where we need conviction. So that, Lord, we may not be barred from experiencing you fully through harboring hate, through harboring bitterness, because of the conflicts that we have encountered. Some of us, Lord, are experiencing conflicts that we cannot even open up about and share with others. But help us, Lord, to lift our eyes and our hearts to you. And as we do so, Lord, we pray that God, the Holy Spirit, will give us the courage, will give us the strength and the endurance that we need to be able to live through those conflicts. Father, I commit the parents that are on this platform and all the parents that are raising children in this very difficult time. Give them the wisdom that they need, Lord. Give them the love, the patience, the understanding that they need to be able to be faithful stewards of these children that you have given them. I also pray for the young adults on this platform, Lord. Bless them. They are living in very trying times where society puts so much pressure on them. But I pray that they may choose to always uphold their Christian values and to turn to you for wisdom and guidance as they navigate life. Bless each and every one of them, Lord. May your plans and purposes for their lives be fulfilled despite the challenges that they may be going through. I also pray, Lord, for the organizers of this platform. Bless them, continue to give them wisdom and help them to have the necessary resources that they require to keep this ministry going. But Father, we pray that when all is said and done, may we all be saved into your kingdom. Through Jesus Christ, our Redeemer and our King, we have prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Amen. We've come to the end of our program, maybe officially, but unofficially or unofficially or unofficially, whatever. We still continue. Thank you so much, Sister Busi. I don't know if you want to say bye to the people, but thank you. Ncube, as your name puts across, Sibusisiwe Ncube, Naganye nakunjalo Sibusisiwe. Chichi from Malawi, I'll translate what I'm saying. Naganye Sibusisiwe Ncube. God bless you all. We're saying Chichi that her name is Sibusisiwe, which means the one who has been blessed. All right. And also we're saying we have been blessed through her presence as well. I'm stopping the live stream on Facebook. Those are on Facebook want to come to the platform.